Our story begins in 1998. A youngster who was just supposed to take over his father's business, who had started cricket just cause his father wanted him to. That youngster was gonna play for India today at the age of 17. This was to be his opportunity to make his mark, to make his father proud, to make his family happy. And in just the fourth match that he played, he gets reported by the match referee. Yup, that's a young Harbhajan Singh challenging Ponting in just his fourth international ODI match. Rude, brash and disrespectful, those were the words used when a one-match ban was imposed on the youngster, along with a hefty fine. But within 3 months of this fine, another word would be added to this description: Chakkar. Harbhajan had been reported for suspect action. It would take 5 more months and minor action correction before he could get back to the team. But when he did, the youngster had become that one thing that the Indian team did not need. He had become average. The magic seemed to have disappeared, and soon he was kicked out of the team. They tried to give him a chance though, shortlisting him for the first batch of the newly minted National Cricket Academy. He was to be trained under the tutelage of Prasanna and Venkat Raghavan, two legends of Indian spin. But within a few weeks of his entry, he was expelled. The reason? Well, you guessed it. Disrespectful and unpunctual behavior. But this time, it seemed like Bhajji had crossed a line. The selectors had been enraged to a point that many a times, Bhajji was told point blank, "You are done. Your cricketing career is over." No selector was ever gonna vouch for him again. His sponsorship job at Indian Airlines was also put on review. Even his spot in the Punjab Ranji team was being called into question. And as if to provide the final punch, his last pillar of support, the reason he was playing cricket, his father, passed away. So, we have a 20-year-old reported and thrown out of the national side, kicked out by the NCA, blacklisted by the selection committee, who is now desperately searching for a way to support his 5 sisters and mother. In short, the youngster was done, with his only legacy being the words rude, brash and disrespectful. But call it fate, call it luck, or even God's plans. There was a captain who was desperately looking for those exact words. Sourav Ganguly. Thrust into captaincy at the aftermath of the fixing scandal, he had been himself facing storms after storms in his captaincy. Even his ascension to captaincy had been fraught with furious boardroom battles and political quagmire. It's a very interesting story by itself, so do message me in the comments if anybody wants to know it. But finally, when he got the captaincy by a very thin margin, he had went on to lose all the multi-nation tournaments. That included one to Sri Lanka, one to New Zealand and 2 to Pakistan. The second time Pakistan won, India had failed to even make it to the Asia Cup finals. So, the captaincy was in trouble. And on top of that, soon coming to Indian shores were the world champions Australia on a 16 wins win streak. And as if to add insult to injury, Kumble had been ruled out due to a shoulder injury. Dadas had tried out 3 different spinners in the last few months, all of whom had failed miserably. Fate seemed ready to put the final nail in Dadas' captaincy. And in a final bit of desperation, Ganguly, along with the newly appointed coach John Wright, asked for a 25 probable candidates who would be tested in a conditioning camp in Chennai. Among those 25 was an improbable youngster called Harbhajan Singh. Later it would be known that the only reason he was selected was that an official from the Punjab Cricket Association had taken pity on the boy who had lost his father. This was to be the last favor he would do for the unfortunate boy. But that boy, he had his own plans. For the last few months, shocked awake by his father's death, with his family now completely dependent on him, Bhajji had to make a choice. On one hand, he could go to Canada to work as a truck driver, or he could try his failing luck here in India. His family or his father? He made a decision. My father wanted me to be a cricketer. So for him, I'll give this one last try. One last try with every fibre of my being. So on the ground he was. Batting, bowling, fielding, doing everything that was required of him. That was followed by stamina training and ending with a flurry of practice balls. Till he got it exactly right. The right height, the right length, right spin and the right bounce. On and on he went, month after month. And in the training camp, it showed. The coach, John Wright's eyes could not be moved away from the 20-year-old. Later, he would go on to say that what amazed him was the sheer bounce Bhajji could generate. The coach quickly contacted Ganguly and informed him of this newly found gem. Ganguly on his end dug into the youngster's record, finding reason after reason after reason to refuse the youngster. All of which made Ganguly want him more. Because quite frankly, Harbhajan reminded Ganguly of himself. Just like Harbhajan, Ganguly had switched from football to cricket to make his father happy. Just like Bhajji, he had a relatively short domestic career before being catapulted into the Indian team. And just like Bhajji, after his debut, he had been blacklisted and thrown out of the Indian team. Reason? His attitude, his arrogance. Later, Ganguly would go on to say that he had just fallen victim to the political battles in the Bengal Cricket Association. The same political wranglings that had kept Ganguly out of the team for the next 4 years. It would take repeated stellar performances in domestic circuits, along with an enraged Sidhu abandoning a tour midway, that finally Ganguly would get a chance. An opportunity that Ganguly held on with mad zeal, slowly and gradually climbing onto the top of Indian cricket. There was no way Captain Ganguly would allow somebody else to suffer the way he had done. Especially someone who was punished for not having good behavior. Good behavior, according to him, had no place outside of a school. When you are on the pitch, you should do everything and anything to win. And looking at the young Sardar bowling, he seemed hungry enough to kill anybody who stood in his way. So, straight away, he asked Bhajji's name to be added to the warm-up match of India A against Australia in Nagpur. Giving the simple excuse, Harbhajan has faced Australians before, so the experience may give him an edge. And it took just a few hours for the India A captain Lakshman to be captivated by the youngster. Standing on the slips, he could see the bounce and drift that Bhajji was generating, salivating at the prospects that it could bring. On lunch, when he got a call from Ganguly about how the players were doing, in spite of Rahul Sangvi taking 5 wickets in the first inning, Lakshman could not stop gushing about Harbhajan. In response, Dada had a simple sentence: "Don't give him any more bowling. I don't want the Australians to see too much of him." The decision was done for Dada. He would get Bhajji into his team by hook or by crook. The funny thing is, Bhajji was so furious at Lakshman's decision to bench him that it took Lakshman explaining to him Dada's decision to calm him down. And so, while Bhajji cooled off, Dada got ready for an uphill battle. The selection committee had made their intentions clear. For the first match, they wanted the recently performing Rahul Sangvi along with Sarandeep Singh in the team. And so it started. Ganguly first explained the coaches and Lakshman's recent observation of the young Sardar, further stating the repeated failures of the same spinners over the last 1 year. Then he showed the relative inexperience of the bowling lineup. What Ganguly didn't know at the time was that soon enough, he was to lose whatever experience that he had. Srinath would be injured in the first game. Agarkar would come down with fever. Sangvi would be dropped after the first test, as would Venkatpati Raju and Venkatesh Prasad. By the third test, the bowling lineup would be Harbhajan with 10 tests, a young Zahir Khan with 3, Nilesh Kulkarni with 2, and Sairaj Bhautale on debut. Things were so bad that bowling would have to be opened by Zahir Khan and Ganguly. Anyways, after the initial proposal, what followed was a tug of war between the selection committee and the team management. Both sides adamant on their view, refusing to budge. The meeting would go well into the night, with Ganguly finally emerging victorious. But in doing so, he had spent nearly all of his political capital, being well aware of the fact that with the World Cup being just 2 years away, any changes to the captaincy would have to be done right now. Hence, this series might as well become Dada's last hurrah. Win and hold on to a captaincy, or lose and lose everything. Dada had mortgaged his entire future to get this one opportunity for an abandoned youngster. Win or lose, they would be on the same boat. And so started the first test. Let me rephrase it. So started the first massacre. A 3-day massacre. A massacre in which Australia had decided to bowl first and face the 4th innings, something that had happened just 3 times on the Indian subcontinent. And yet, not only did they defeat India, they humiliated us at home. By the time Ganguly got out in the 2nd innings, the ground was filled with a sea of boos. It seemed to be the funeral song of Ganguly's captaincy. The only light in this debacle was the abandoned youngster who had taken 4 wickets in an inning. And come the second test, it would feel like deja vu. Harbhajan taking wickets and India losing the plot. BCCI insiders were muttering that it might as well be that Ganguly had started the young man's career, literally sacrificing his own. But then came the miracle. The miracle of Kolkata. The miracle of Dravid and Lakshman batting through 1.5 days to save a test match for India. We have made a detailed video on the match if you want to hear about it. But for now, that historic stand by itself would have been enough to make this test match memorable. But what made this match legendary was what Harbhajan was about to do. What looked easy seas under Dravid and Lakshman was converted into a minefield by Bhajji. The captain had informed him, just go and do whatever it is you want, I'll do the rest. In the 4th inning Australian collapse that Harbhajan effected, in this legendary match that India won, it was Ganguly working in the background, setting the perfect trap for the youngster to exploit. Lakshman would later go on to say that what people saw was Bhajji's magic, but what they didn't see was the smart setup done by Ganguly around the bowler. Ganguly knew that the Australians were gonna take on Bhajji, so from the outset he set out an in and out field, preventing the Australians from playing their favourite shots, or else doing so at the risk of their wicket. And while this trap was set into motion, Tala would see something very peculiar. His aggressive actions seemed to have a particular effect on his team's youngsters. Whenever he picked a fight with Australians, the youngsters together seemed to want to continue the fight on his behalf. So, starting from the 2nd inning, whenever he felt that a team morale is going down or they are about to lose a grip on the match, he would purposefully go and needle the Australians, picking a fight, acting enraged, and then just sitting back, letting Zaheer and Bhajji do the rest. A perfect example of which came in the 3rd test, Chennai Day 4. It's the 3rd inning and Australia is leading by 131 runs. Shane Warne has just scored 39 runs along with Steve Waugh, and India seems to be slowly, ball by ball, losing the match. And by the time the last over of the day was about to be bowled, Warne was surrounded by Lakshman at slip, Das at forward short leg, and Dravid at leg gully. And walks in Ganguly at silly point without an helmet. In the next 2 balls, as Warne defended for his life, Ganguly kept on poking at Warne, talking to him, needling him, challenging him. And on the last ball of the over, the last ball to be bowled that day, he calls up a 5th fielder to stand at gully, going and correcting his position again and again, making Warne wait with the anticipation and anxiety of the last ball building. And so came the last ball. Warne, seemingly scared by the sheer number of bodies around him, pushed his leg out way before the ball landed, and then realizing his mistake, instinctively tried to pull his leg back. But the ball had already reached its mark. Shane Warne was out on the last ball of the day. Bowled by Harbhajan, engineered by Ganguly. If you take the interviews of both of them, even today, on one hand, you have Harbhajan saying that Dada backed me up when the whole world had turned their backs to me. And Dada, on the other hand, straight away says, Bhajji saved my captaincy. Either ways though, one fact remains. On that summer of 2001, the streets of India were filled with Amul's ads, proudly stating, Har Bhojan ke sang, with every meal. In essence, cementing Bhajji's place in the Indian team for years to come. And Ganguly, having won the gamble of his captaincy, would go on to change the mentality of Indian cricket. Asked about this gamble years later, he would go on to say that leadership is an amazing disease. It either cures you or kills you. But if you can rise up to its challenge, prove yourself equal to its demand, it is the best job in the world. Thank you for watching this video. We have made numerous videos on that series. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.